Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Passionate Talk. This is episode number 4. I'm your host, Gary Karp. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Takara Shelor. Takara is a best-selling author, mystic, public speaker, and the owner of Debbie Takara's Dancing Dolphin Store. And let me tell you folks, we had a great time with this talk. Takara is a wonderful, wonderful person, and she gave me so much good stuff, so much value, that I could not edit it in to just one 30-minute podcast. So Takara is the first Passionate Talk guest that actually gets 2 episodes. That's right, it's two shows in one. Actually, it's one show on 2 different days. Today is going to be part 1. Tomorrow is going to be part 2. In tomorrow's episode, Takara is going to tell us a little bit about her journey. But today, we're going to talk all about empathic and psychic ability and how to develop it. We'll talk about the difference between men and women energetically, the difference between intuitive, empathic, and psychic. I'll share a little bit about my experience with a psychic palmist. Takara will tell us how to develop your psychic abilities, talk a little bit about sun salutations, and she will tell us about her 4 noble C's. So right now, folks, relax, sit back, grab a cup of coffee or some tea, and enjoy my talk with Takara. So how's your day been?
My day has been strange, actually. I got really grumpy there for a while, which is very, very unlike me. It was so weird. I was like, okay, what's really bugging me? And I didn't actually take the time to look at if it was my stuff or not, because I'm empathic, so I pick up things from others.
Well, okay, I guess a good place to ask the question now, since we've opened that door, is how do you know when you're picking up something from another person and when it's the energy is coming from you?
I douse it.
Oh my God. Did I tell you I get a Skype call at everything?
Oh, too funny.
Hold on for a second, please.
Okay.
Let's go back to where we were before, and you were speaking about being empathic, and you were feeling in a kind of crummy mood, and you couldn't figure out if it was energy that you had.
Was it mine or was it somebody else's, right?
Yes. So can you talk to me a little bit about being empathic and how you figure out whether the energy is coming from you or from someone else? And also, how do you protect yourself from that?
We could talk all day about just that question. But that's okay. It's okay.
That's fine.
I am empathic. That's just a given, okay? And what I'll say is women tend to be more receptive energetically than men, okay? And I liken it to men in their sexual anatomy. They tend to be projective, right? And women tend to be receptive. That's just how we're wired. But
Yes.
We're not just wired that way sexually, we're wired that way energetically, and our energy bodies also. So if you were angry, I would feel it because you would be projecting the anger and I would be receiving the anger. Do you see what I mean? Not all women or people. I mean, it's not really a gender thing, but there's a tendency for women to be much more so like this than men, for example.
There are some men that I know, myself included, who are a little bit more more in touch with their feminine energy.
Right.
I've got a friend of mine who calls me mushy. Do you find that most men who are in touch with their feminine side are more empathic than others?
Well, first of all, empathic, being an empath is not exactly the same thing. Okay, so let's kind of back up and talk about that for a minute. All right. So just in general, women tend to be more involved or more aware or more, what would be the word, affected by other people's emotions. That's just sort of a given. And you were talking about mushy men, or you as mushy specifically, right? There are a fair number of men, especially those who are spiritually minded, people who are working to become balanced, masculine and feminine, people who are on a spiritual path, people who are learning to exhibit more compassion, get more in touch with nature, do meditational practices and that sort of thing, yoga, which moves energy, or Reiki or Tai Chi, and Qigong, which also moves energy. All of those things help a person become more sensitive and in tune with their own intuition and with the energy, what's happening in the unseen world, okay? Which makes them more sensitive to emotion. Having said that, being an empath, it takes that idea to a whole other level, okay? So being truly empathic means if I wanted to, I could literally tune in when I'm talking to someone, and they can be saying one thing to me, but I know underneath it how they're really feeling. It's really hard to pull one over on an empath, pretending that you like them when they know absolutely that you don't, because they can tell. You know, they're reading that on another level.
I know with what you're saying, I agree with you, and I refer to it more as being more intuitive, relying more on your intuition or that gut reaction. It's that, I'll call it ickiness you get when you're around somebody, you know, that you just know there's something off there. Is that similar to what you're talking about?
It is, and they play together, okay? I would actually say that intuition is a little bit different. I mean, it exactly what you said is correct about intuition, but you can take intuition to a whole other level where intuitives, when they're in tune, when they're clear energetically, when they've worked on themselves and healed their emotional wounding, they literally just know stuff. Like, they just know. And that's not just picking up things, which I think is maybe more being an empath, all right? Like the icky stuff that you were talking about. An intuitive, it's not just feeling, but it's also knowing.
I know these terms are sometimes thrown around similarly, that they can be interchangeable between intuitive and empath and psychic. How would you break down the difference between the three, or is there really one?
Well, I mean, again, exactly like you said, it's basically semantics. But from my perspective, they are very different. I'm going to say, like, I don't know that much about being psychic because I'm not, okay? But I am extremely, I mean, really advanced intuitively. But I'm not psychic. Like, I do not read the future. Psychics, I believe, and like I said, I'm not one, so I really cannot speak for the people who have that ability. They're reading energy in your field, right? An empath is picking up your emotions, or they're picking up energy in a space, but a psychic is picking up something in addition to that, and I'm not sure what it is exactly, okay? But there's information in there, in your energy field, that they are reading, which may or may not have to do with the future. You know, I don't really understand all about psychic readings, whatever. But intuitives can tune into something and know if it feels icky or know if it doesn't. But they can also, they just know things with absolute certainty.
I know that last week or 2 weeks ago, I was giving a tarot reading to a client. And at the end of the reading, she said, well, let me give you a reading in exchange. And I said, no, that's not necessary. This is what I do for a living. I do it to help. And before I could even put up any other argument for not, she grabbed my hand. She was a psychic palmist. And she went to read the love line, the lifeline. And she immediately saw on the love line that there was a break there. And she looked at me and goes, who was the girl that came back twice? And a whole bunch of stuff. And then all of a sudden, she stopped, looked up, and her eyes became unfocused. And she started talking to me about things that no one knows, and definitely that I did not speak to her about prior to setting up the appointment. She started telling me things about this book deal that I'm talking about, that I'm doing, that the call we got right before we went on the air was all about. She started talking to me about a girl that I'm interested in. And these things just blew my mind because it made me a believer.
Okay.
So I definitely do see the difference between empath, intuitive. Intuitive? Is that the proper word? Intuitive?
Sounds good to me.
I just created a word here. There we go.
I love it. We'll get it put on the dictionary or whatever. Urban Dictionary, that's where we'll put it.
But I do agree with you that there's something there with psychics that they plug into something, a connection with the divine or a connection with whatever you call that other people just can't see. And this woman literally freaked me out because I had never had an experience like that before.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so that's actually, depending on who you hang out with, a fairly common occurrence. I mean, the circles that I run in, what you experienced happens like practically every day. I'll throw out to you what I call being in that space where you can read like that, or where you're just so aligned, information comes in. Okay, so what I call it the noble C's, and the reason I call them the noble C's is because each of the words that start with the letter C, and together I think they represent a state of being that we all want to be in. It's a state that we're all trying to attain, so I call them noble. But the words are calm, clear, confident, and then the last one is divinely connected. When you are aligned properly, when you're in a calm and centered space, when you're clear, when you've healed the stuff and you're really not skewing the information, okay? Because readers can, because of their own beliefs, fears, judgments, etc., read incorrectly. And so it's really important to work on clarity and alignment and all of that sort of thing and healing oneself. And then we get confident. Like, so she had no problem just grabbing your hand and saying, and speaking to you. There's confidence in that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then divinely connected means it's coming from a very high divine place. You know, the higher self of the other person that you're talking to, etc. You know, some people might call what comes through in those moments, they might call it channeling. Somebody else might call it a psychic reading. I think you can call it a lot of things, but ultimately you might get an image, you might get a sound, or you might get a feeling. Those are the three ways that our intuition works. You hear, you see, or you feel. Some people can do all three. All of us can do at least one. We may not have enhanced that ability, but we can do it. But we tend to have one that's more pronounced than another. And when you are the kind that is the feeling, knowing person, it's called clairsentient. And clairsentients tend to be empathic because you feel, you live your whole life tuning in and feeling how the room feels, how the opportunity feels, how this conversation feels. You know, it's just, you can learn to operate from that place and then engage your logic. And so it's a very balanced way to do it.
Now, you mentioned before the 4 C's, which, if I remember them correctly, were calm, clear, confidence, and divinely connected.
Right.
If anybody in our audience believes they are empathic or they want to develop their intuition or their psychic ability, do you have any tips, tools, strategies on how they could achieve each one of those 4 C's?
It's kind of like if you work on any of them, you're actually helping all of them, okay? And I have 5 practices that I recommend that people do. I sometimes write things like this down before I do interviews, and I didn't, so we'll see if I remember all 5.
Takara, it's okay. This is a wonderful thing. This is what Passionate Talk is all about. We never know where it's going to go. If you can remember them, great. If you can't, we'll take what we can get.
Whether I can or I can't, I have no problem with that. You know, like I don't get freaked out. Okay.
That's good to know.
It's, like, you know, wherever this is going to go is wherever it's supposed to go. So one of the practices that I recommend every single person do is meditation. There's lots and lots of different ways to do that, and I've even written a best-selling book on the subject, okay? So,
cool.
But you can get, you know, there's lots of ways to meditate, and so there's no one right way. And there's even moving meditations, like Tai Chi is a meditation. Another one of the practices that I recommend is time alone in silence in nature.
It's very important.
Yeah, and something that I want to talk about just briefly, whenever I make that statement, I want to make sure that people don't do something that's unsafe. Especially women in our day and age, depending on where you live, it may not be safe to be out alone somewhere. So, people, I know the next question is, well, how do I do that if it's not safe in my neighborhood or whatever? I came up with an answer already that I like to just share, which is get a group of people, whether it's 2 people or 10 people, it doesn't really matter. Go on a little hike together or show up in a park together. But sometime during this time that you're going to spend together, agree that a certain period of that time is going to be done in silence. It could be while you're walking on the trail. Maybe for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, we're not going to say a word. We're just going to be in inner reflection, walking along a trail, or we're all going to sit down in a clearing or find our own little boulders, and we're going to sit in silence. But I can see these other people, and I know if something would happen that I'm safe. You're not out there vulnerable.
Your health and your safety is tantamount, is the most important thing, so please take the proper precautions.
For those people that are truly not in a place where this is reasonable, there's ways to bring nature indoors. There is audios of nature sounds, water in a brook, just water tumbling over rocks. There's a sound to it. And just listening to that sound in the comfort of your own home, and when you're in that place, you have realizations. You have insights. You get aligned with the divine, and you get centered and balanced within yourself. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish with all these things. The next one, I kind of mentioned it under meditation, but you want to do some sort of moving exercise. Tai Chi or yoga sun salutations, or the 5 Tibetan rites. These are all exercises that not only move your body and get your energy moving, but they open the energy channels, the chakras, the energy centers in your body. And that's really, really important for clarity. It's important for health. It's important for aligning with the divine. The one thing that I mentioned was the sun salutation. And the sun salutation is a series of movements. So you don't hold the pose very long. You do this, and you breathe in, and you do that, and you breathe out, and it's a continuous set of movements. And those movements are specifically designed to open up all these channels and do all these things. They're basically a full body thing that you can do very quickly. So in the mornings, I start my day with meditation, followed immediately by only 3 sets of the sun salutation. So my whole thing, the exercise portion of how I start my day takes less than 5 minutes. Doing how much you're doing to prepare for weightlifting and stuff is fabulous. But not everybody has that much time. But if you could just add these little tiny exercises to the beginning of your day before you run off to the office or whatever, it radically makes a huge difference. And I should say that my meditation is not that short. I do a 20 to 30 minute meditation daily. The very next one is dowsing with a pendulum.
Really?
Yes.
That one's a surprise to me. I'm interested in hearing the whys behind this.
Okay. Well, earlier you asked me how I would know if what I'm feeling is my own emotion or if I've picked up some negative, disharmonious energy from someone else. How do I distinguish the difference? And the answer is I pick up my pendulum and I ask. Okay? Dowsing, what you may have ever seen or heard of is, the old guys with the big stick, but dowsing is so much more than finding water. Although it's still being used even by the military, sometimes police forces use dowsing to find missing people. When you use a pendulum and you hold a pendulum, all a pendulum is the weight at the end of a string. Truthfully, you can use a necklace. You can use, I used to teach classes where just to prove the point, I would bring a bunch of yarn and a bunch of paper clips. and I would have people tie paper clips to the bottom of string, and we would dowse. So it's just literally the weight at the bottom of a string, where you have programmed it by saying what means yes and what means no, and you are able to question. And what it taps into is your nervous system, which is also tapping into divine wisdom or your higher self. And so when you ask these questions, you're engaging much more of yourself than just the logical mind, and you get some pretty profound answers.
Now, you said earlier that the pendulum doesn't have to be metal on a crystal. It could be yarn and paper clips. My own personal experiences with pendulums, and I've been able to play with them, and I'll use the term energetically manipulate them. Since I was about 15, I call it a party trick. I can hold the pendulum at the end of my hand and just think or say out loud left or right, faster, slower, up and down, and the pendulum will follow my instructions.
Right.
But I've always only been able to do it with metal. Whenever I've tried it with yarn, whenever I've tried it with string, it's always more difficult for me.
Yeah, but what you're trying to do is mentally manipulate.
Yes.
And when you're dowsing to get answers, you want to do just the opposite. You actually want to go into a very balanced, centered place. You want to be very intent and focused on the question that you're asking, but you do not want to have an opinion. You do not want to influence it at all.
So the fact that I'm trying to manipulate it and make it a trained dog that may be a horrible metaphor, but it was the one that popped into my head.
Right.
Is that's what's causing the situation where it's working better with the metal because the metal is a better conductor of energy?
Probably.
Because that's what I've always thought.
Telekinesis and the ability to move things and all of that, and bending spoons and that whole deal, I mean, that's real, and there are people that can do all of that. But to really douse, to be pendulum dowsing the way that Einstein did, the idea is to go into that noble sea place, that calm, clear, confident, divinely connected place, but to have absolutely no opinion about the answer. And the more you meditate, especially in a theta brainwave meditation, the more you're able to disconnect from your emotions, because like you said, you can influence the pendulum, and you don't want to be dowsing properly.
Okay.
So when you pick up the pendulum, you are saying to the universe and to your higher self that you're seeking higher wisdom, that you want answers not just from your conscious, logical mind, but from a higher, broader perspective than your logical, conscious mind has at the moment about whatever the topic is. Whenever you pick this up and you are asking questions and seeking answers, it helps you radically, radically enhance your intuition. You can use it for anything. I mean, there are business executives that use it for really, really important things in their business. You know, it's much more sophisticated than people might think, or especially people that have never heard of it. They think it sounds crazy, but there is a whole lot that really, it can make a huge difference in your business, in your personal life, and all kinds of things.
I've played with it, but I've never used the pendulum for dowsing. I've always used it as a party trick, actually.
Right.
Because
right.
I discovered that gift or that talent or that ability, whatever you want to call it, at a very young age. And, you know, when you're 16, you're not thinking metaphysically or higher power. You're looking, wow, that's cool. Look what I can do.
Exactly. And it is cool. I mean, that is a very cool thing. The ability to bend reality or to move an object, it's just one step shy of realizing you can bend reality, that you can create the future you desire, that you do have some influence on the things around you. You're not just being buffeted around by the universe, but you actually are playing a conscious role with your mind.
And the fifth one?
The fifth one is what I call playing with energy tools. And it doesn't have to be tools exactly. It could be Reiki or working with energy, but basically working with energetic things that raise the vibration, because they lift you up in a way that helps you see the shadow parts. They help you release the parts of yourself, the trauma drama from the past, the emotional wounding that really needs to get handled. You know, a lot of people try to suppress that stuff and pretend it never happened and go on with their life. But to really grow and evolve and to come into center and balance and really reach their potential as an individual, you really have to turn around and actually look at that stuff and handle it and heal it. And so playing with energy tools is a great assist. So you could play with crystals. You could play with flower essences are a great, great tool. Like I said, Reiki or another hands-on healing thing, something where energy is coming through and it's bathing you, you know, whether you're doing it to yourself, as you know, if you know how to do Reiki, you can put your hands on yourself, do the chakras. After I learned to do Reiki years and years and years ago, I was taking this 8-day Warriors in the Mist training in New Mexico with Stuart Wilde, and we were getting up at like 4 and 5 in the morning and having to get on a ski lift and go to the top of this mountain, and it was cold in the morning on top of this mountain. And so I was doing the Reiki, I was calling in the energy, and I was putting my hands on my thighs, and it was warming me up. Like I was sitting there toasty warm while everybody else was freezing. I mean, you know, so I was using it for a very physical reason, but it also raises your vibration and it helps shake loose some things. So, you know, crystals and all this, I call them toys or tools. They're fun to play with, but they actually are healing and they do a lot of great work.
So those are the 5 steps that you can use to help yourself gain clarity and get clear.
Right. If you're trying to achieve the Noble C's, every one of those works with all 4 of the Noble C's. I mean, the whole idea is you're raising yourself up vibrationally. You're expanding in awareness and consciousness. And you are coming more into alignment and wholeness. It's a process. It is our human spiritual evolution. And it's a never-ending process. But once you've achieved some level of wholeness and balance, you become different and your whole life changes. There can be more fluidity, there can be greater synchronicity. You can decide you want something and it starts showing up faster. You know, there's all kinds of things that can occur when you focus on growing spiritually and evolving that way.
Now, for our listeners who are out there, I know there are plenty of people who are out there facing their own challenges. They may be trying to develop their psychic ability, their intuition, or just become more spiritually aware. What's the one piece of advice you would give to these people?
Know that in this moment, you are in the exact perfect place that you're supposed to be in, doing exactly what it is that you need to do. And if you just take a few moments, maybe every single day, write in a journal, or just take some time in silence, you will be guided from a very high, wonderfully loving place, the next actions to take and what it is that you need to evolve as an individual.
That is absolutely beautiful, and I find that advice to be more true than not. What I'd like to do right now is just to give you an opportunity to talk about and plug whatever you're doing now. Tell people where they can get in touch with you, where they can buy your books, or anything else that you'd like to plug. Here's your opportunity just to let people know.
Let people know who and what I do.
Absolutely.
My primary website is magnificentu.com. That's the word magnificent followed by the letter u.com. And when you go there, I've got hundreds of articles you can read about all sorts of topics, everything from how to do well on the internet to dolphin energy healing and some very, very esoteric topics that I cover. There's also a link to my store, which has my best-selling books. It also has the dolphin-inspired flower and gem essence products I have called Dancing Dolphin Alchemical Synergies. And if you're interested in dowsing, the things that I was talking about earlier, I actually have an online course called Dowsing for Divine Direction. And that is found on the main website, not on the store. But I do a lot of things, and they're all on there.
Wonderful. And of course, is there any place else people can connect with you, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, be it YouTube?
Right. I'm on all of those. I'm a Takara Shelor or Debbie Takara Shelor, and on all of those platforms. I check Facebook probably 5 times a day. I have a personal page, 2 business pages, and 2 groups that I lead on Facebook. I spend some time on Instagram, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel. So in all of those places, Takara Shelor or Debbie Takara Shelor. Shelor is Shelor. So, and I'm the only Takara Shelor anywhere on the internet, really.
So if somebody just goes to Google and types in Takara Shelor, they're going to find
They'll find all my stuff, yeah.
Takara, this has been a ton of fun for me, even with all the technical issues that we had. This has been one of the best conversations, and really, I am not kidding. Anytime you want to come back and talk about dolphins or these subjects, this has been one of my most fun conversations I've had since I've been doing this.
That's wonderful. Well, I am always thrilled to speak to interviewers, and I've loved spending the time with you. So anytime you want me on, I'm happy to do
Wow. That was a lot of fun. Takara gave us so much information about what it's like to be an empath and how to develop your own empathic, intuitive, and psychic abilities. From her noble C's of being calm, clear, confident, and divinely connected, which is the state we all want to be in if we want to enhance our intuition. And really, it's something we should strive for every day, just to increase the quality of our lives, to be able to live in the moment and be calm, clear, confident, and divinely connected. That really is the goal, and we should strive for that every single day, folks. It really will improve the quality of our lives. Takara also gave us 5 practices to enhance our intuition and our psychic ability: to meditate every day, to spend some time alone in nature each and every day, to do some sort of moving exercise such as yoga or Tai Chi, to douse with a pendulum every single day to connect with your higher source and your higher intuition and intelligence, and to play with some energy tools each and every day. Now, listening to Takara's talk about pendulums, she has inspired me to go out there and get my own pendulum and to start dousing with it and to start connecting with my higher self. So I'm really excited, and I want to thank Takara for that because I'm looking forward to that journey. And don't forget, Takara will be back again tomorrow for part 2 of my talk with her. She'll be sharing her stories about her journeys, her love of dolphins and whales and how that came about, and how she started a nonprofit organization to help these wonderful, wonderful creatures. She's also got some other great stories about her life and the businesses she started, so I hope you come on back and listen to part 2 tomorrow. That's all the time we have for right now. I want to thank you for tuning into Passionate Talk. And until the next time, follow your dreams and passions and manifest the life you choose.